Good evening. Or in some cases, I would say, good evening, church. Good evening. My name is Frank So. I'm the Executive Director of Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, and thank you. And it's really so good to see you all here, the community, what we call the church, the people who really make up what it is to be a church community. This morning, when I woke up, I sometimes look for words of inspiration in the morning. And if any of you know me, I do like to read some inspiring things. I think it's a great way to start. And this morning, for those of you that are Methodists or know of some Methodist pastors, I read some words by Pastor Kramer in Idaho. And it really resonated with today. He said, Jesus' harshest words were not directed to the sinners. Rather, Jesus' harshest words were directed to those who use their religion as a tool of oppression and self-serving power. Amen. He went on to say, Jesus' harshest words were directed towards religious hypocrisy, and we should not forget that. The separation of church and state, which some of you know, there's this book called Separation of Church and Hate, but the separation of church and state protects Christianity rather than threatens it. It protects Christianity from becoming corrupt by the allure of political power. It protects Christianity from becoming corrupt by wealth, by privilege, which are causes that Jesus himself spoke in the gospel about. It protects Christianity from nationalism. It keeps Christianity Christian. Once the church crawls in bed with the empire, it loses its ability to prophetically speak truth to power. He ends by saying, it becomes a mouthpiece for the empire instead. I promise to keep this short, and I will, but I want to acknowledge those who helped us get here tonight and year with every Collins lecture. We try to bring perspectives, and sometimes it's really about not taking a side, but bringing the sides together. We have folks in this room who think in various ways and believe in various things. We believe in respectful dialogue, and we believe that the only way forward really is with dialogue. I'd like to recognize the members of the board of Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. If you're a board member, would you please stand and be recognized or wave? Thank you for your service. And many of you who are ever asked to be on a board and have shied away, please consider it. I may be coming to talk to you too. I want to thank our members of our Theo Ed Committee, that's our Theological Education Committee, who have helped bring the ideas and bring this day to fruition. I want to express my gratitude to the Collins Foundation, who without, we could not do these lectures annually. Our host, Trinity Episcopal Cathedral, under the direction of Dean Barnacle, who's here with us tonight, thank you. And a big shout out to our emo staff, and particularly Christy, who's on my right. Andrea Omajola, if you could stand. And I know they're all over the room and outside, but I also want to make a shout out to Michelle Bush, McKendry Thompson, Erica Martin, Francis King, and all of our volunteers. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank each of you for spending your evening with us, to learn, to grow, to dialogue together for justice. And it's in that justice in action that we will truly find peace. And now, it's my distinct honor to welcome the Right Reverend Diana Akiyama, the Bishop of the Episcopal Church in Western Oregon, to come greet us. Thank you.
I'd like to read to you the land acknowledgement of the diocese, the Episcopal Diocese of Oregon. The Episcopal Church recognizes and repents its harmful treatment of Native Americans. In 1997, the Episcopal Church signed a new covenant of faith and reconciliation almost 400 years after Jamestown colonization, apologizing for its past actions and launching a decade of remembrance, recognition, and reconciliation. In 2009, the General Convention of the Episcopal Church passed a resolution repudiating the 15th century-based doctrine of discovery, which held that Christian sovereigns and their representative explorers could assert dominion and title over non-Christian lands with the full blessing and sanction of the Church. In 2023, the 135th annual meeting of the Episcopal Church in Western Oregon affirmed the General Convention's resolution and formally, by resolution, repudiated the doctrine of discovery and identified next steps as a diocese to work towards reparation, reconciliation, and healing. The Episcopal Church in Western Oregon recognizes the impact that its history has had on Indigenous communities in Oregon. Beginning in the early 1850s, the Episcopal Church built churches on land in Portland taken from the Multnomah, Kathlamic, Clackamas, Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River. The vital work of remembrance, recognition, and reconciliation in connection with our Indigenous siblings continues. We are pursuing this in our racial justice work, truth and reconciliation ministries, and relationships forged through repentance, forgiveness, and restoration with Indigenous people in our communities. That was how we got to the land acknowledgement I will now read. The Episcopal Church in Western Oregon occupies and works on the traditional, ancestral, unceded, and ceded lands of many tribes throughout Western Oregon. Following multiple treaties between the federal government and Indigenous peoples, Indigenous communities were forcibly removed to reservations throughout Oregon. Today, living descendants of these people are part of the Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua and Siuslaw Indians, Coquille Indian Tribe, Cow Creek Band of Umpqua Tribe of Indians, Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon, and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. Indigenous people are valued, contributing members of the Episcopal community in Oregon, and there are multiple sovereign tribes represented among our parishioners and staff. The Episcopal Church in Western Oregon is comprised of faithful Christians who confess their historical participation in and ongoing benefit from the displacement of Indigenous peoples throughout Western Oregon. We accept our responsibility for understanding the continuing impact of that history on these communities. The Episcopal Church in Western Oregon is committed, in the spirit of our baptismal covenant, self-reflection, worship, reconciliation, and partnership, to ensure that this church will be of enduring benefit, not only to the state of Oregon, but also to the people on whose ancestral lands it is now located. So welcome to this Cathedral of the Episcopal Diocese, Oregon. I know that we're all anticipating a wonderful event this evening, and I'm glad you could join us here tonight. I'd like to open us with a prayer. Let us pray. O God, you make us in your own image and redeemed us through Jesus, your Son. Look with compassion on the whole human family. Take away the arrogance and hatred which infect our hearts. Break down the walls that separate us. Unite us in bonds of love, and work through our struggle and confusion to accomplish your purposes on earth, that in your good time all nations and races may serve you in harmony around your heavenly throne. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. And again, welcome.
To help center us and bring us into dialogue with our Collins lecturer this year is Dr. Jessica Taylor. Dr. Jessica Taylor is a strategic executive advisor, author, ordained minister, and founder of the Leadership Training Initiative. She partners with nonprofits, boards, universities, and social ventures to strengthen leadership, navigate crisis, transitions, and institutional change. Please help me welcome Dr. Taylor.
Hello and good evening. Are you awake? Good evening. I'm Dr. Jessica Taylor, and I have the privilege of introducing our speaker this evening. Our guest tonight has the single best origin story of anyone writing about religion in America. He is the son of a Catholic nun and a Franciscan friar. His parents fell in love and left their vows and raised the comedian and broadcaster you're about to meet, which makes him uniquely qualified to write a book about reclaiming Christianity from people abusing it. The book is a New York Times bestseller, and it's called The Separation of Church and Hate. He is the host of SiriusXM's Tell Me Everything, and he's gone toe-to-toe on air with both Jerry Falwell and David Duke. Quite the pedigree. We're going to have an opportunity a little bit later to ask some questions, all the juicy questions that you may have, you came here to ask. At the end of your rows are these note cards, so the people at the end can locate those. We want you to be able to write your Q&A, and then they'll pass up and we'll collect those. About 10 minutes into the session, we'll go ahead and do that. So if you want to start passing those around, you can. For those who are joining us online, you can also email us your questions at F as in Frank, King at emoregon.org, and that's fking@emoregon.org, so we can see your questions there, and we will make sure that this hot seat gets a little bit hotter with the audience questions, okay? Our speaker tonight is an actor, a comedian, a writer, and a political commentator who's appeared everywhere from MSNBC to Fox News. And by his own admission, he's someone who spent his own whole career being too Christian for the liberals and way too liberal for the Christians. He grew up with grace before dinner and Mass every Sunday, and he watched the religious right rise in the 1980s and suddenly didn't recognize the faith that he had been raised in. And that's what sparked the book. He wrote it to take the Bible back from people he says have hijacked it, and to argue that the actual teachings of Jesus come down to something pretty simple. That's welcoming the stranger, loving our enemies, caring for the poor and sick. So please help me welcome John Fugelsang.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Hello to everybody watching online, by the way. Let's give a round of applause for everybody trapped at home. Thank you. There have been many books written like this politically about using the teachings of Christ against authoritarian Christians, written by brilliant theologians and clergy and scholars. I have no credentials whatsoever, no credibility. I'm here to do balance. There have been books by great clergymen and women, none by vulgar comedians about the same gospel subject. So it's a pleasure to be in this beautiful room. I have been treated so well by everyone, and it's just an honor to know that I'm the least moral person in this entire room. It's just beautiful. I'm serious. I feel like Ringo. I'm just glad to be here. Thank you. Before we get started, let me get a bit of awkwardness out of the way because we're all about love. So it's not weird. Do we have any Trump-supporting brothers and sisters in the house tonight? Just raise your hand. I won't be mean. Just raise your hand. Any? Well, are they clapping? Do we have any MAGA supporter? It's okay. I won't be mean. I promise. I won't be mean. There's always a hostage husband dragged to one of these things. I'm sorry. You know this. If we do have any MAGA brothers and sisters, I'm honored to be here. If any of the jokes offend you, please come see me after the show with your receipt, with your ticket stub, and I promise I will make Mexico pay for it. And who would ever lie about something like that to a Trump supporter? And if you are a Trump supporter, I'm honored that you would even make it this far into my insufferable speech. If you love the Jesus who appears in the Bible, you have nothing to fear from me. If you love the feeling of being in power more than what Jesus talks about, I'm sorry for ruining your weekend. But please remember, Jesus saved his harshest words for people in power and hypocrites, not sinners. He forgave the latter and flipped tables on the former. I'm just trying to continue the table flipping. Thank you. Speaking as an abnormally Catholic person, let me just begin. How about that Chicago Pope, huh? Anyone? Oh my God. When I first found out that the Pope was going to be an American from Chicago, as an American, I was curious. As a Catholic, I was wary. And as a comedian, my heart was filled with hope. I mean, Chicago Pope. I just imagine Southside Leo, the deep dish pontiff. I mean, he'll forgive your sins and show you where to hide a body. Chicago Pope, right? Like, I thought about how he would end the Mass. You know, in the Catholic services, we ended by saying, the Mass is ended. Let us go in peace to love and serve the Lord and one another. Thanks be to God. Chicago Pope ends the Mass as just, guys, we good? Huh? And then he winds up being this rather soft-spoken fellow, this very mild-mannered guy that was picked by the cardinals who were picked by Francis. Nobody knew what to make of this Pope. Remember the first few months? I mean, the liberals were angry he wasn't more liberal. The conservatives were mad he wasn't more conservative. And the rest of the world was like, wait, he's an American who speaks more than 2 languages and he doesn't own a gun? Really? What? But he does this thing, this Pope, that baffles, stymies, and infuriates Christian nationalists. He directly quotes Jesus. That's it. Last year, they asked him about the detention center outside Chicago, and he quoted Matthew 25, the judgment of nations, welcome the stranger, where Jesus says individuals and nations will be judged by 4 main criteria, heaven or hell. Take care of the poor, take care of the sick, welcome the stranger, be kind to those in prison. He just quoted Matthew 25. He did not attack the policy. He didn't attack the administration. He just said, that's the Christian position. It's Jesus' direct marching order. He didn't fight. He just said that's what Jesus says. So Mike Johnson, America's creepiest youth pastor, it's going to be like that. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I am going to be so Catholic with guilt by the time this is done. They go to Mike Johnson, and he's just like, well, let me Bible-splain something to you, Pope. And he, of course, goes for Romans 13. These are the 2, you could argue, defining verses. A verse versus a verse. Matthew 25 and Romans 13. That define the theology of the Christ followers and the authoritarians. I mean, one's not even Christ. It's amazing how Paul's letter to the Romans, just one part of it, not the part where he tells you to take care of the immigrant, not the part where he tells you never to hate, but where Paul says to the fledgling Roman church, guys, I don't want you to get killed. Don't get killed by these Romans before this church I built has gotten a chance. So please respect the governing authorities. God put them there. Don't get your heads cut off. So they pick and choose one line from that respect the governing authorities, God put them there. And for hundreds of years, that has been louder than the teachings of Christ for authoritarians. From Caesar to Hitler, authoritarian Christians always choose submit to authority over the woke Jesus stuff. The Confederacy loved Romans 13. Hitler loved Romans 13. The British used Romans 13 on the colonists to try to discourage them from revolution. So now the media has made so much of this fight between the Pope and Donald Trump, this fight between the Pope and J.D. Vance or Mike Johnson. And I don't think that's the right framing, brothers and sisters, because this Pope did something really smart and kind of Christ-like. He wasn't actually fighting them. He's actually showing us all very calmly, with no anger, no visible outrage, how to delegitimize and expose them for fraudulent anti-Jesus teaching Christianity. This war in Iran begins. Oh, sure. So this war in Iran, this illegal war begins in Iran, and Leo steps up to a microphone, and he pretty much, all he did was give what I think theologians would call a greatest hits compilation of Jesus' teachings. He says, blessed are the peacemakers, love your enemies, turn the other cheek. Not controversial. Really basic stuff, Christianity 101. I mean, it's like the spiritual equivalent of just wash your hands. Don't eat the silica gel, just, Blessed are the peacemakers. It shouldn't be controversial. And Donald Trump is outraged that this Pope would criticize his war, which is amazing because historically, y'all know popes have done a lot of really bad things, but not being pro-war enough is not one of the things people usually complain about. So Easter comes, you'll all remember, and Trump threatens to wipe out an entire civilization on Easter Sunday. I always thought Easter was about people coming back from the dead, not sending thousands to it, but they go to the Pope. And again, he just quotes Jesus. Put away your sword, for those who live by the sword will die by the sword. The last thing Jesus ever said to his friends when they tried to fight for him, and he told them to stand down. And so Mike Johnson says, well, the Pope waded into politics. And that's how they try to shut it down. I mean, because famously, Jesus never talked about power or empire or violence, right? I mean, Jesus kept it light. We had parables, maybe a TED talk about carpentry, that was it, right? But suddenly when a pope says, hey, maybe Christ isn't into mass killing, ooh, that's too political. Friends, you all know our fundamentalist, Christian nationalist, right-wing Christian friends have waded into politics to support slavery, segregation, to deny women the vote, to support segregation, to justify invading Iraq, to take away reproductive freedoms from women, even though Jesus and the Bible never says to do that. Oh, but the Pope needs to stay out of politics. So then Trump does his bizarre AI Jesus art. Remember that? I mean, I know it's like 25 outrages ago, but like this weird AI thing he made with, like, it's like a mescaline hallucination at the NASCAR halftime show on a Monster Energy drink. I mean, he's dressed as Jesus in a very flattering tunic, but there's lights coming out of his hands, and he's healing someone in a hospital bed. It looks like one of the Oak Ridge Boys. I don't know who it is. And there's all these white people praying at his feet. And the use of messianic imagery to sanctify political power is nothing new. Most authoritarian movements of the 20th century eventually wrap themselves in God and the flag. This is how religious and political leaders signal to their followers that their power is not just political, it's divine-ish. Like, they can't quote Jesus, but they'll do sacred churchy talk. It's divine-ish. This is a man with gold sneakers playing a man who told the rich to give everything away. This is a man obsessed with power playing a man who rejected it. And I'm sorry, being mad that the Pope won't endorse your war is like being mad that your doctor won't endorse your cocaine habit. It's just, they're not going to do it. But what the media missed was the Chicago Pope showed us again something essential about Christian nationalists, because they weren't arguing with the Pope. He didn't give his own opinions. They were arguing with Jesus. You don't have to fight these folks. Asking questions will usually do it. Make them argue with God. Make them explain why Donald Trump is right about not welcoming the stranger and God and Christ are wrong. Make them explain why Trump is better than the Bible. It's It's been easy to control so many Christians for 1,700 years because they get us to focus on what? 3 things: the manger, the miracles, and the cross. Not the 3 years Christ spent teaching and commanding and explaining what a nation would actually have to do to earn the label a Christian nation. This Pope got them to show that the only thing Christian nationalists hate more than the Bill of Rights is the parts of the Bible where Jesus talks. Now, again, I lack any theological credibility. I have no moral credibility. I'm just a comedian who enjoys calling out gospel grifters, holy hypocrites, and theocratic thugs. And in fairness, at a very young age, Jesus showed me how to do that. I'm here because 2 people broke a promise to God. As some of you know, my mother was a nun. She grew up in the segregated South, and right out of high school, she entered the convent with the Daughters of Wisdom. They put her through nursing school and eventually sent her off to work with lepers in Malawi, Africa. Before they shipped her off to Africa, they briefly stationed my mom in Brooklyn, New York. Now, my father was a Franciscan brother. He taught history to Catholic boys at St. Francis Prep. He wore the brown robes and the rope belt and walked amongst the people like the lost Jedi of Flatbush. My father taught history to Catholic boys. He lived the ways of St. Francis. And as a Franciscan, he fell in love with the civil rights movement and Gandhi and Dorothy Day. When he first entered the Brothers, my grandparents in Brooklyn were the whole family. Oh my God, Jack's going to be a brother. That's like a priest, right? We'll get into heaven now. We got a guy on the inside, right? And after a few years, my dad was suddenly talking about Gandhi and talking about the civil rights movement and arguing with relatives about what the gospel said and writing conscientious objector letters for young Catholic men who opposed the war in Vietnam. My father, the brother, met my mother, the sister. When they stationed her, he was her patient at Holy Family Hospital. He had sworn, like the Jedi, to never know love, but by all accounts, fell instantly, madly, desperately, passionately, over the edge and never coming back, in love for life with this quiet Southern girl in a nun's habit that he knew he couldn't have and had promised God he would never want. So they became close friends. She went off to Africa. He stayed here and wrote her letters about everything happening in the States, Vietnam and the civil rights movement. The Mother Superior would open my mother's mail. There were no TVs or newspapers in their village, and she would read his letters out loud to the entire convent. And my mother was always the last to receive her mail. And eventually, it's a very long story, but he finally, after 10 years of hiding it, told her he loved her. And she left the convent, and they went on a date. And so they settled on the Isle of Long, and they tried to raise my brothers and me to be progressive, free-thinking Catholics, which is why I do stand-up comedy, because I can never afford the therapy I so deeply require. So, friends, I grew up admiring Jesus the way anybody admires their mom's first husband, but I must say, and I mean no disrespect to the faithful, I've come to view Jesus in much the way I've come to view Elvis. I love the man. A lot of the fan clubs still frighten me quite a bit. Because I was raised, like many of you, to believe that Christianity is about the stuff Jesus talked about. Go to the margins. How you treat the lowest in society is how you directly treat him. Stop executing people. He never mentions abortion, but he's really against murdering the sinner. I mean, pay your damn taxes, right? Love your enemy. Turn the other cheek. Go the extra mile when someone's being cruel to you. It's all right there. And like many of us, I was raised to believe that's what Christianity is. When I was very small, my dad pulled me out of bed late one night to come watch the evening news. I didn't understand. I had to get up in the morning, and he was very strict about bedtime, but he wanted me to see something on TV, and it was Jimmy Carter on the late news signing the Camp David Peace Accord with Menachem Begin of Israel and Anwar Sadat of Egypt. My dad could not believe An American Christian had helped bring peace to one corner of the Middle East, and he grabbed his kid out of bed because he wanted his son to see a Jew, a Muslim, and a Christian embracing in peace and love. I had no idea what I was watching. I knew who Jimmy Carter was, but Moshe Dayan had an eye patch. That was cool. I didn't know what to make of it. But I saw my father's face, and I had never seen him that happy. And that's how I understood this was significant, whatever it was. To my father, this was everything America and Christianity could and should be. And then I grew up in the 80s, the era of the fundamentalists, the Jerry Falwells, the Pat Robertsons, the Jimmy Swaggarts. You guys know the fundamentalists. They're really into man-made rules, really into regulations, not really into Jesus' message about love, grace, and mercy. They're into hierarchy. They're all about the patriarchy. They prop up the oligarchy. But if you watch TV news in the late 20th century, it was these blow-dried televangelists, some of them like Falwell, ex-segregationists, which I never knew. The TV never told me this man had been a segregationist. I was never told by my TV that this Falwell had built whites-only schools. I debated him on Bill Maher, and I'd never known this. Media didn't tell us. He was a Christian leader. These were the men American media said were the true Christians. But they didn't talk about helping the poor or the sick or welcoming the stranger or caring for the least of us. They told us who we should hate, who we should fear, the liberals, the feminists, women who want control of their own bodies or to have a job, and labor unions and welfare queens and gay people, and the people they called illegals that I call Christian refugees because it pisses off the right people. Millions raised Christian, and we grew up to find this religion of peace and love hijacked by bigots and fascists and frauds. And they managed to take over the world over the issue of abortion. Starting in the late 70s through now, they redefined Christianity in this country. They got the followers of Jesus to vote against everything Jesus ever talked about by talking about abortion, which Jesus never talked about. And the fundamentalists of all the religions, I like to say, are the ones ruining all the world's great religions. It's not the moderate or liberal Muslims causing the problems, is it? It's not the moderate or liberal Jews or Christians or Hindus. It is the extreme, not the nice conservatives either, but the extreme conservative wings of all the world's great religions. When our atheist friends say, oh, religion's responsible for all the violence and oppression, I'm like, no, fundamentalism of all the world's great religions, because the overwhelming majority of Christians, Jews, and Muslims are getting along just fine right now all over the world. Right? They're making businesses and building families and going to schools together. They're doing fine. It's the far-right fundamentalists making the world interesting for the rest of us, the Muslims, the Jews, I assume the Scientologists, I don't know. The more extreme conservative any fundamentalist faith is, the more they have 5 things in common. Really quick, women are great, but God likes men better. The more extreme conservative your religion is, the more women are second-class citizens. They're 51% of the world, but not as good as men. It's how God wants it, sorry. The more extreme conservative fundamentalist your religion is, the more there's the need to control other people's sex lives. I don't see Jesus doing that, but extreme conservative Muslims, Christians, especially if it's women or gay people enjoying their sex lives. Third, for fundamentalists, violence is okay if my side does it. They're really ready to overlook their holy books because I'm on God's one true chosen team, so I'll get a pass. Fundamentalists also, number 4, they always focus on punishment over healing. Always. And finally, whenever they're criticized, they claim persecution. Of all religions, the persecution narrative. It was done to me, so I get to do it to you. They don't care about fighting for God, the Christian nationalists or the authoritarians. They don't fight for the gospel. They don't fight for Jesus. They're not fighting against Satan. They don't care about religious freedom. They care about conservative control of society. Not the teachings of Christ. Conservative Christian control of society. That's New Apostolic Reformation isn't focused on how to help the poor. They're focused on cultural domination. And please remember, brothers and sisters, mixing extreme conservative religion with authoritarian power is exactly what killed Jesus. Young people are not leaving religion because of Jesus or God or Santa Claus or Noah's Ark. They're leaving because of the cruelty and the hypocrisy and the meanness we've seen in so many churches. And so it is today that while the percentage of Americans identifying as religious continues to go down, the percentage of Americans who believe America was founded to be a Christian nation with slaves is increasing. In other words, as the religious population shrinks, the fringe is growing. And sometimes the fringe is armed and thinks Jesus wants wrath. If you're debating a Christian nationalist on any of the issues that divide us, even if you're an atheist, Jesus is on your side. Going by the Bible, this Jesus that they talk of so loudly was a peaceful, radical, nonviolent revolutionary who hung around with lepers, hookers, and crooks. He never spoke English, was not an American citizen, was anti-wealth, anti-death penalty, anti-praying in public to be seen, Matthew 6:5, but never once anti-gay, never mentioned abortion, never called poor people lazy, never asked a leper for a copay, never said torture's okay in some occasions, and never said that the state should force women to be pregnant against their will, never said that governments should force teenage rape victims to be pregnant against their will. None of it's in the Bible. And he was a long-haired, brown-skinned, that's in Revelation, brown-skinned, homeless, unarmed, community organizing, anti-slut-shaming, Palestinian liberal Jew. That's only if you believe what's actually in the Bible, though. And it's not what they teach us, because the real Jesus, the love of the Beatitudes is chaos for authoritarians. 10 commandments, God bless them, 10 no's. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Very simple for some folks. So they fight to put that up there. Have you ever seen a conservative Christian politician or leader fight to put a single Jesus quote on a classroom wall or a courthouse wall ever? Christ was all about humility, not total right-wing domination of the school board. Conservative power was what Jesus stood up to, not for. Time and again, the Pharisees and the religious authorities drunk on their own eminence, the wealthy worshiping their own stature, the capitalists in the temple with their surge pricing, exploiting the most vulnerable, the imperial government of Rome. Satan visits Jesus before his first public gig and offers him the world. He says no. John 6:15, Jesus feeds 5,000 people with the loaves and the fishes, and they're so impressed they try to seize Christ and make him their king by force. And it says Jesus withdrew again to a mountain by himself to avoid it, because Jesus was about no kings before it was trendy. So here, the Christian nationalists, they're not Jesus followers. They are Christian-flavored authoritarians. They like Jesus' teachings the way fast food chains like salad, you know? Like, it's officially on the menu, but they don't care for the taste. Again, the 10 Commandments are being required in classrooms by Christians who are blindly obedient to a man who's broken all 10. Speaker of the House says we were founded as a Christian nation. Government officials try to get Americans fired for quoting Charlie Kirk's exact words. Friends, the only way you can follow both Donald Trump and Jesus is if you've never read either of their books. Because the only thing Donald Trump and Jesus have in common is they spent a lot of time around prostitutes. And they both used ghostwriters. Our Secretary of Defense is brazenly, petulantly pontificating on government property to a spiritually diverse volunteer army. And while this poser pontificates, they're blowing up schools full of Iranian girls. They're blowing up people in Venezuelan fishing boats with no evidence, cutting services for the poorest of the poor. They're protecting wealthy abusers of children as we speak. Trump has broken the law every day since December 19th, a law he signed to protect rapists of children. Every day, they're cutting taxes for the wealthy, cutting services for the poor, and masked cowards with badges are chasing brown kids around church picnic grounds. And it's nothing new. Please remember the constant play in authoritarian Christianity ever since Rome took over the startup. Step 1, use Jesus' name to get power. Step 2, with that power, do the opposite of everything Jesus says. And step 3, If someone points out step 2, claim you're being persecuted. A country founded by deists who didn't want a king and a religion inspired by a rabbi who told people to love their enemies has been hijacked by power-hungry frauds. And I'm sorry, every time Donald Trump talks about the Bible, an angel coughs up blood. Now, I warned you. I warned them all before they invited me. I'm going to cut because I'm getting short on time and I'm like only halfway through. When I started at SiriusXM, I talk to MAGA friends every night. They call me all the time, and I don't like to fight. I don't like to hate. I've been wrong about a lot in my life, so I get it. And I ask a question. Please tell me one teaching of Christ that Donald Trump has fought for, or give me one teaching of Christ the MAGA movement fights for, or the Republican Party. Give me one gospel thing Jesus said that Trump campaigned on, or that the Republicans have fought for legislatively this entire century. Give me one. That's all you need to do in many cases, friends. And you will find out how little your MAGA friends have actually read that Bible they wave so bombastically above their heads. Truth. I ask the question all the time. Number one, I get the same top 3 answers from people. Give me one teaching of Christ Trump has fought for. Number 1, abortion. And I explain, no, the Bible doesn't forbid that. God asserts in Exodus 21 that a fetus is property and that a woman's life has more value in his eye. Abortions are legal and free in Israel right now because Jesus' religion doesn't ban it. Numbers chapter 5 is God's instructions for abortion on an unfaithful pregnant wife. I'm not saying Jesus would be a clinic escort on the weekends, but the Bible's not against it. Christ is against the death penalty, and that's usually when they call you a communist. The second most common answer I get, a strong border. And I say the only commandment in the entire Bible about borders is to welcome the stranger. God says it all through the Hebrew Scriptures, commands us to treat the alien as one of our own. The number 3 answer I get, he moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. It's true. And that's why I have to politely explain at no point in the Gospels does Christ mention the United States or where he thinks our embassy should be 2,000 years in the future. And when I say fake Christian, please know I am not talking about our brothers and sisters. I use the term fake Christian to describe those in power. I'm not talking about your racist cousin. I'm talking about the people who made him racist. I talk about leaders, not neighbors. The political leaders, the religious leaders, the media figures, the business leaders, the tech bro leaders. They are the fake Christians. I don't go after deceived people. I go after the deceivers. When we call out authoritarian Christians in power as fake Christians, it's not an attack on Christianity. It's historical and biblical clarity. Who's going to stop these folks from weaponizing Jesus' name while they reject his message? The Democratic Party's not going to do it. The media's not going to do it. Everyone in this room has had the experience at some point of some secular person assuming that you hate gay people, assuming that you think the government should force women to be pregnant against their will, assuming that you're an intolerant bigot, because these folks have reframed Christianity to give the entire movement a bad name without following Christ. You got to name it, you got to call it out, because if we don't, we're allowing them to frame all religion is like this. If we don't label the fake Christians, then we are letting them put MLK in the same basket as the KKK. Think about it. MLK and the KKK. Both used Christian language, both quoted the Bible, both claimed moral authority, but they were not practicing the same religion in any meaningful sense. Dr. King's Christianity was grounded in the actual words of Christ. It led him to nonviolence, to civil disobedience, to love of enemies at the greatest personal cost. The Klan's Christianity is guided by a pathetic need to dominate and justify terror and lynching and racial hierarchy. Same religion on paper, totally different moral universe and practice. If Christianity is defined by the teachings and examples of Christ, then these two cannot be morally equivalent expressions of the same thing. One aligns with the core ethic and one gives it the finger. That's the history of Christianity, friends. All this authoritarianism, but there's always been the Christ-following resistance. So the Crusades begin, and Christians are now slaughtering Muslims and pagans and Jews for land and doing the opposite of everything Christ said. For Christ, we're putting up crosses while we slaughter people. St. Francis of Assisi left the service, lived in poverty, preached nonviolence, walked unarmed through a war zone to speak with a Muslim sultan. Columbus is slaughtering the Taino people in the shadow of the cross, and it was the Catholic priest on his third voyage, Bartolomeo de las Casas, who was appalled at the treatment of the Taino people and wrote to the Queen to protest the inhumanity. People knew back then it was evil. They say, oh, no one knew it was bad back with Columbus. No, a Catholic priest performed the first ever act of resistance and protest by a white person in this hemisphere against Columbus. They knew it was wrong. Look at American slavery, propped up by the church, and the actual Christ followers like Frederick Douglass and the Quakers and Harriet Tubman formed the Christ-like abolitionist movement. Segregation, propped up by Christianity, and Dr. King uses scriptures to shame white America out of our apartheid. Hitler, the greatest Christian nationalist in the history of evil, and a Christ follower like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, whose heart was changed when he came to America and experienced the grace and resilience and beauty of the African American church and left this country a changed man. And black folks here who had survived segregation gave him the guts to give his life for his Jewish brothers and sisters against Hitler. And think about how many of us have talked to so many parents and grandparents that have so much homophobia in just the last 30 years. There's an incredible history of Christian activism in this country and in this world, and it's always been in response to Christian authoritarianism. Delegitimize their fake piety. Put it this way. Let's say you're in a Rolling Stones cover band, and you advertise, I'm in a Rolling Stones cover band. We're called the Rolling Stones cover band, and you sell tickets, and people come to see you, and then you don't know the words to any Rolling Stones songs. So you're just up there singing Vanilla Ice and whistling Lee Greenwood, and you don't know the material, and you don't know the words. It doesn't bother you, but you just called yourself this, and so maybe it's time you find a new name for your group, because you don't know the words Mick and Keith wrote. And let's be clear, you don't defeat bad theology by becoming a worse version of it. We can't hate these people. You can't outrage people who thrive on outrage. And we can't fight authoritarianism by copying its methods, but it can be dismantled effectively, relentlessly, nonviolently, using the actual teachings of Christ, because they're against any kind of system of hierarchy. If you think you're better than other people, you think you're better, Christian nationalists and entire other groups of people because you're Christian, bro, you're not Christian. You don't follow Christ at all. He's all about humility. It's not weakness, and I'm not selling you religion, it's strategy. Christian nationalism works because it pretends to own Christianity, and we are going to stop it. Break their monopoly on moral language. If you're quoting Jesus accurately and citing his teachings on humility, mercy, and nonviolence, you are not the one attacking faith. You are defending faith from the hijackers. And as we move into this post-Trump era, more and more of our loved ones and neighbors and Facebook friends are going to be realizing how deeply they have been hoodwinked, bamboozled, and led astray by these con men. People who took a long time to realize they were suckered about the Iraq War are going to be finally beginning. They've been suckered by this racist landlord with a reality show. And the most socially responsible response to this is not to rebuke them for having been on the wrong side, but to use the moment as they start to wake up and try to find common ground on fundamental core values, because we can't hate. We don't get to do that. And if we hate them back, we lose. Dorothy Day famously said, you only love God as much as you love the person you love the least. And that is something I have struggled and failed with my entire life. But the growth of others is not to be met with smug liberal I told you so's. Jesus called, he wants his religion back. And fusing Christian identity with political power has always led to the opposite of everything the Nazarene taught. That Nazarene Jew who washed his followers' feet and said, the greatest among you shall be your servant. That's Christianity, not domination, but service and transformation. And the defining question before us is, are we going to make the same mistake German Christians made 90 years ago and enable full-on authoritarian rule? Because helping the poor is the conservative Christian point of view. Opposing the death penalty is the conservative Christian point of view. Being kind and loving the foreigners. Christ's traditional positions involve forgiving those who wrong you, treating all as equals, having compassion for the ones your culture tells you it's okay to hate. These ideas were radical 2,000 years ago, and they still have the power to terrify authoritarians. I got to wrap up. I'm going a little over, but I will say I'm not an optimist. I am a recovering cynic. I know how bad it is, and I also know that hope is logical, and I know that the bad guys will fail. They always do. It always collapses. Show me one example in history of an authoritarian religious government that is now considered the good guys of any religion, any society. So let me leave you with something light, because if I make this educational, I get a grant. I just want to share a brief passage or a brief thing I talk about in the book. Again, you don't need to fight them, okay? Make them argue with God. Make them argue with Jesus. Talk about what the Bible actually says. Where does Jesus justify this? And they're going to pull everything out of the Bible because it's in the Bible somewhere, right? It's just as good. We all pick and choose the parts of our holy books we wish to follow. We don't all pick and choose to justify meanness and cruelty and violence. Christians are not called to follow the Bible. Christians are called to follow Christ. And the ones who quote Romans 13 have read one line of it, like they've read one line of Leviticus to justify their cruelty to our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. This is a little thing in the book, but I've always been amused by creationists who are hardcore about that. As a young person, I get so angry. I'd be like, what do you care about a talking snake? What does a talking snake have to do with the teachings of Jesus? And I'd fight people about this. As a teenager, I was like so headstrong about it. Now, you can have fun with it. Let's say you have that hardcore talking snake believing uncle racist who comes over for Thanksgiving with his wife Aunt Dead inside. That's what I call him. And let's say they come over and he's talking about, I mean, to believe Genesis is literal fact, you have to believe that women have painful childbirth as punishment because a talking snake tricked a lady. That's not really covered under Jesus' plan in terms and conditions, but okay. So here's what I recommend. Whenever I'm having this debate, I don't get mad anymore. I just say to my right-wing loved ones, okay, which part of Genesis? Because Genesis chapter 1 says that man and woman were created together in God's image, which would make God non-binary, wouldn't it? It's very important for some people to believe that God has man parts swinging on him, I guess. But then I say, but then Genesis chapter 2 is a completely different creation narrative. Which one do you believe, Uncle? Because in Genesis chapter 2, God makes man first, and then gives him a big butch job of giving names to all the animals. Bob Dylan did a song about it, and it's there that Adam realizes that none of these animals would be a suitable mate for him. And as a child, that passage terrified me. I'm like, what does that mean? What were these auditions like exactly? Like, who's Adam trying out to see if they'd be a suitable mate? Like ferrets and squirrels and turtles? I mean, who gets the rose in this ceremony exactly? So you know the story. Adam goes to sleep, and God comes and takes his rib and turns it into Eve, and that's the first woman. So say, which Genesis do you believe, Uncle? You can't believe both. They can't both be true. You're not interested in the teachings of Christ. You're interested in believing this is literal fact, so which one do you believe in? Choose one. 9 times out of 10, your right-wing loved one will say, I believe God made man first, because they have to believe women give life, but we did it first, right? So they'll say, I believe God made man, and then took man's rib and turned that into Eve. And without getting angry, without having a fight, all you have to do is just say, oh, so what you're saying is you believe the first woman in all of history transitioned from a man. You don't need to fight them. You don't need to hate them. They will never have you back, and they will never forget you. God bless you all for inviting me here for this beautiful, beautiful welcome. Thank you for letting me be a part of this. Thank you.
Head over here.
This year I played for the... Oh, flip my switch. Thank you. This year I did my first time playing a cathedral, by the way.
Well done.
I just played a Holocaust museum for the first time, so I'm that great room for comedy, by the way. Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Absolutely, thank you, and thank you, everyone. We are going to enter into the Q&A section of our time tonight. Again, you have your cards. We'll pick those up in a little bit, but we would love to just dive in. So many good zingers, one-liners, things we're supposed to take away.
I'm excommunicated by now.
No, not at all. Not at all, but I would love to know, for those that read the book, maybe listen to the book at 2.5 times speed like myself, tell us
That's how I talk on the radio.
Yes, it's beautiful. Tell us the central argument that you want us to leave with from this.
Wow, the central argument for this book is hate is not a Christian value. And
Love that.
And you don't need to believe in the Bible as literal fact to live a Christ-like life. You don't need to impose a religion on other people to live by the teachings of Jesus. And I happen to believe that a Christian nation is something we don't want America to become, but a Christ-like nation. I pray for it because I think the teachings of Jesus might be the only thing left that could save this country. Because Matthew 25 is also very smart economics. I mean, if everybody is doing okay, everyone's doing okay, and mutual care is the only thing that has ever worked as a system for humans.
Is this the part where we call you a communist?
Yes, now you call me a communist, yes.
Okay, good. I love it. Thank you so much. Tell us about this humor. You said it's cheaper than therapy, but tell us how you kind of landed on this as the approach for how to come into conversations like this.
Wow, that's a great question. I've had two great patron saints of the arts in my life named George. George Harrison and George Carlin. Both of them raised Catholic, and then they both took that and did a lot of interesting things creatively and spiritually. And they both changed my life. I got to work with George Harrison, and I got to see George Carlin live many times. And for me, there's the spirituality we're raised with. And then you either keep on growing in that spirituality or you try to stay with your childlike version of the story. We're not taught as children what military occupation means. We're taught about the cross, and there's Romans there somewhere, but we're not taught that Jesus grew up in a police state. Young brains have no way of appreciating how much of Christ's teachings are actually about non-violently resisting hierarchy and power, not by attacking it directly, but by saying, no, I don't acknowledge you. I mean, when Pilate is talking to Jesus, 2 words and he could walk out of there. Hail and Caesar. It's all he had to say. He would not acknowledge it. Just by saying, my kingdom is not of this world, by acknowledging there was another king, you were dead. And they don't teach us this as children. And so for me, growing up creatively, I fell in love with comedy watching Carlin. And I began to want to talk about Christianity on stage in a way that would be entertaining first and preachy last, but going after mean people. My targets have always been people in power and mean people. And there's a great rule in politics and Christianity and comedy: don't punch down. I mean, think about comedy. It's just like Christianity. If you're attacking the marginalized, attacking those below you, you're doing it wrong. You go to a comedy club and a comic's doing jokes about the homeless, doing jokes about developmentally disabled people. If you're drunk enough, it might be funny, but you'll feel dirty after. It's the ones who punch up at those in power. And so my mother and father at a young age forbade me from ever explaining their life. They would not let me tell people that they had been in the clergy. And it made it tricky for me. When I moved to Los Angeles in my 20s, I was doing Bill Maher's show a lot. And he had me on debating David Duke and Jerry Falwell, but I was never allowed to say what my parents' background was. And I always respect Bill Maher because he booked me on that show. Joe Scarborough, I disagree with many things, but he books me on his show. And finally, when I debated Jerry Falwell, I went after him like a comedian. I didn't try to debate scripture. I tried to own him. I tried to humiliate him. I tried to get laughs from the audience and make him look silly. I tried to out-bully a bully. And that was satisfying, but I didn't change anyone's mind. And afterwards, my parents were not pleased with how confrontational I had been, and I told my mother, I want to talk about this stuff more. I want to be able to ground it in Jesus, make it funny, and try to reach people in ways that that I can. And that was when, because of Jerry Falwell, my mother gave me permission to tell her story.
Wow.
So that's, yeah, and then trying to make it funny, which they don't like in Hollywood. I had a lot of agents and managers beg me not to talk about it. But, you know, they say the largest growing religious group in our country are Mormons, or some say it's Islam, some say it's none of the above, but I've come to think our largest growing group are people who were raised religious and now consider themselves spiritual because they're so turned off to all the meanness and cruelty and bigotry. And so I just want to go after mean people, and it turns out Jesus is your homeboy, if that's what you want to do.
Thank you. So we're going to non-violently punch up.
Yes, non-violently
Okay.
punch
I'm with you.
Yes.
I'm with you. I was talking to a friend just this last week, committed Christian, loves Jesus, but was having some struggles with the language. You talked about that, the language of what's been hijacked, of saying I'm an evangelical or a Christ follower, or I go to church, that doesn't have the same connotation anymore. So what would you say to him about reclaiming some of that language in terms of his faith?
I'd say the word reclaim.
Yeah.
When it comes to authoritarian Christianity, it's refuse it, resist it, and reframe it. People have a very negative attitude towards Christians because of the kind of Christians they put on TV. I don't see a ton of liberal Christians on cable news, do you? I mean, when we're about to go to war, they don't bring on the Berrigans. They don't bring on the peace activists. They bring on retired generals. And growing up, we didn't see liberal Christians. We saw people scolding about your sex life. And so I understand why people have that opinion. And then when you see someone come out and actually do it like Jesus, look at how much our atheist friends like this Pope. Because he's not talking about abortion or your sex life or gay people. He's actually saying, no, we have to help the marginalized and we have to be against war. Look how atheists respond to that. I don't think it's that they hate Christians. I think they hate these frauds that have seemingly hijacked the faith. And I think there's more of the good kind. They just don't have the platforms. They don't have the voice. There's more of y'all than there are of the fundamentalists. They're more organized. Divide and conquer has always worked that way. But I do believe that it's the teachings of Jesus that will bring Christianity back. It's the only thing that'll help. Young people are not going to start returning to church if they think it's a mean institution.
Right.
And by the way, you know, healthcare for all and caring about the environment and fighting for justice and opposing racism, these are very popular with young people, and they align very well with the teachings of Christ. The smart churches are going to plan for the future. The stupid churches are going to keep it mean, and we've seen this. You've got to keep your little church as Christian nationalists so racist against the illegals, because if you don't, the more racist church down the block's going to open. And they're going to compete with each other. They'll know we're real Christ followers by our love, and that's the message that wins.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Oh, don't clap for that.
Clap for that.
I'm getting all preachy.
So when we think about our online commentary as well as our kitchen table commentary, other than maybe blocking or canceling people, how do you respond to people who will tell you, hey, you're a little too hard on the church, or you're not hard enough?
Yeah. I respect that. I get accused all the time of being too hard, and I don't mean to be too hard on the church. I go after fundamentalists. I've never attacked Christianity at all. I go after frauds and mean people who use Jesus as a cloaking device to cover. I have no problem calling Columbus a fake Christian, or Hitler a fake Christian, or Trump a fake Christian. But again, to me, the distinction we have to make, and what I'm trying to do with the new book I'm working on, is that we don't go after our friends and neighbors who have been deceived. Because we've all been wrong about stuff, and I look back on what a revoltingly homophobic teenager I was, because my peer group said it was okay. It's in the Bible somewhere. God hates them. You're supposed to hate the gays. I didn't know what I didn't understand a new covenant. I didn't understand Leviticus doesn't apply. I didn't understand that most of us don't follow anything in Leviticus. There's just this one line they tell you about. Leviticus 20:10 says you have to stone adulterers to death. Remember Leviticus 20:10, next time your right-wing loved one says it's a gay's abomination. Well, are you bringing a bag of rocks to Mar-a-Lago? Because if you're not executing adulterers, you don't believe in Leviticus. You don't live by it. You don't obey it. But you'll pick and choose a book you don't follow to hurt a minority Christ commands you to love.
What role do you think we play as clergy, as leadership? Speak a little bit to that in this beautiful cathedral about the role of just religious leaders in this space.
I mean, it all comes down to the leadership.
Yeah, say more.
I think in many cases, whether a lot of folks stay as part of the faith comes down to the leadership. And the leadership is what we need. And honestly, the good Christian leadership, y'all know, they're not getting on TV. That Reverend Barber once in a while, you see a few people. Diana Butler Baskett's on TV once in a while. There's good folks out there, but generally, I wish I had seen Richard Rohr on TV as much as Jerry Falwell growing up. So I think it's absolutely essential, but I think it's also, we have to remember that Jesus' Christianity is not a hierarchical system, so we all need to consider ourselves leaders. And I'm going to butcher the quote, but St. Francis said, the only encounter a person may have with the Gospels today could be their encounter with you.
Yeah. Yeah, let that sit for a minute.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. So you've spent years on radio and on stage and all these conversations across the country. When I interview folks, I love to hear, we heard what you're learning. Tell me something that you're unlearning or that you've completely changed your mind about.
Oh, wow. Kissing the ring of the Holy Roman Empire. It's
wow.
Lovely to have popes I like now. I'm always finding what I've been wrong about. The first thing for me was the death penalty as a kid, and then homophobia. And I couldn't believe in writing this book. I thought I knew it all, and I learned so much. My favorite part of writing this book actually was the chapter on feminism, because that's a great example of how they don't teach us the real story. I mean, women in Jesus' time, it was brutal. You were property. Women were property. Women's biology was weaponized against them. Menstrual blood, which gives us life, men decided it makes you unclean in the eyes of God. I say in the book, it's like the gospel according to Ike Turner. And if a man was tired of his wife, kick her to the curb. Women couldn't get educated, couldn't learn. And Jesus breaks all of this. But they never taught us that as kids. I talk about in the book the story of Mary and Martha, the sisters of Lazarus. I always heard the story in church when I was young, when Jesus and the 12 come over and Mary's sitting at his feet and Martha's doing all the housework and Martha's all mad that Mary's not helping, and Jesus finally says, "Martha, you're stressing everybody out. Chill out. She's made the right choice." And as a kid, I was like, I know, I feel bad for Martha, Jesus. You got 13 guys coming over, even Judas, and she's doing all the work? Come on. It wasn't until I got older that I realized that Jesus was breaking the law by teaching a woman. And the fact that she was sitting at the rabbi's feet made her the prize pupil. They don't teach you that. They don't teach you that Christ was being a revolutionary and that he's literally telling Martha that education, ladies, matters more than housework. The bleeding woman, it's okay. The story of the bleeding woman, the woman who'd been bleeding for 12 years, the Sam Cooke song, Touch the Hem of His Garment. She tried so many remedies. She was ritually unclean. You can't touch a woman when she's bleeding, or you can't, if you sit where she sat, you're unclean in the eyes of God. If you bump elbows with her, you're unclean in the eyes of God. She heard Jesus was coming. Touch the hem of his garment is the Sam Cooke song. And she goes into the crowd and she touches his hem of his garment, and Jesus says, "Who touched me?" He feels the power go out. She goes, "Me." And he goes, "Daughter, you're healed." And it's a nice story. They never taught us as kids that that woman was breaking the law by going out of her house in public. She made everyone in that crowd ritually unclean. She made Jesus Christ unclean in the eyes of God according to their own laws. And Jesus turns around, and it's the only time in the Bible he calls anyone daughter. And he says it to a ritually impure woman who just made him impure in the eyes of their own religion. She broke the taboo, and Jesus shatters it for good. It's amazing the fundamentalists think this guy's on their side. And I was never taught that as a kid. The revolutionary aspect of this man continues to astonish me.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got one more question before we go to some audience
I'll start
questions,
giving
I
shorter
believe.
answers. Thank you.
No, this is great. As an audience, if we leave with an action, a conversation, something that we can do differently tomorrow, what would you want that thing to be for us?
Oh, you guys are all, you came here. You're doing something right. No, it's different for all of us. You know, we all have different pain, and our pain drives us to do different things that are counterproductive. And when it comes to spirituality and resisting these people, you already know it better than I do. We can't hate them back. We have to beat them, and we can't hate them. But I'm not talking about using Jesus as a weapon. I'm talking about getting in front of crowds, having witnesses, and making these people explain where their holy book gives them the right to do things. Because otherwise, they are exploiting and hijacking a movement based on love to serve a mean, authoritarian, white supremacist clique. So go forth in your own way. Give love, protect yourself, look out for the marginalized, and keep bringing it back to Jesus. I mean, I can't tell you how amazed I am to see this Roman Catholic Church that I grew up in. And women in the priesthood is the first issue to radicalize me when I realized, like, oh, you don't think the Virgin Mary's worthy of saying Mass? And it's based on nothing in the Bible. There were the three women, Mary, Martha, and Mary Magdalene, went everywhere with Jesus and the 12. But the men who wrote the Bible said there weren't 15 apostles, there's 12 apostles and 3 groupies. All hierarchy, all superior, all power, all power. So I was so grateful for the women in my life that guided me beyond the rules of my religion, and that's what Jesus does. It's all about going past the rules of your religion to a deeper kind of love. He's not about domination, he's about transformation. And not being superior to your fellow man, but being superior to your former self. I'm paraphrasing Hemingway there, but that's what his movement's about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Any other questions? Thank you. We're deliberating a bit what the questions
Folks,
are going to be.
give it up for Andrea.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. They're assuming I can read, so here we go. Is there Christian nationalism without white nationalism? Conversely, is there a Christian peace without multi-ethnic peace? Which is a simple question for you. Y'all, you showed up. I love it.
No and no. I think there is Christian nationalism is almost interchangeable to me with white Christian nationalism. And again, these are all umbrella terms like fundamentalism. I mean, they're very close. Fundamentalism and Christian nationalism, they're like cousins who are married. They're hard to tell apart. And of course, you can have non-white participants in Christian nationalism, just like you can have non-white racists. We saw those 4 black cops in Memphis that beat the holy hell out of that poor black man. People said, how could they do it? Well, that's how racism works. They weren't beating up a white woman. Those 4 black cops knew they could get away with beating up a black man. That's how it infects all of us. And so, but that's just a participatory thing. I think it's the problem is white Christian nationalism. The black church is not causing all the problems in this society or causing our economic problems either. Right? Thank you. When has the black church ever screwed things up for people? Ever. You ruined a few races today. That's about it. And the second part of it again is, give me the second part.
Is there a Christian peace without a multi-ethnic peace?
No, absolutely not.
Thank you.
No, by definition.
We have a couple more. I'm drawn to this one because this one was written by some young people. It says, we are high schoolers, so thank you for being in the room with us tonight.
Thank you.
How should we talk to our MAGA classmates? We know many won't change their minds, but it's hard to balance religion, politics, and friendships.
Yes, it is. Look, there were no WMDs in Iraq, and thousands of Americans died, and folks reelected them anyway. Donald Trump had cops beaten on the Capitol steps for a lie. So we're not going to pull anybody out of a cult. It's not our job to deprogram a zealot. We can't change them. We have to love them. If you're in high school or college, and of course, the internet is really committed to turning young men into monsters. The internet cares a lot about making young men racist. The internet really needs young men to hate women. It's how they recruit now. Star Wars fan groups are turning young men into misogynists. Like, we have to be more aware of it. And especially young people, bring it back to Christ. Just say to your high school classmates, Tell me one teaching of Jesus he fights for then. I mean, why should I believe that MAGA voters care about the actual teachings of Jesus? Why should I believe you care about the 10 Commandments when you are blindly obedient to a man who has broken all 10? You don't need to fight them, but ask the questions. Give me the teaching of Christ. Give me the gospel justification for Trump support. And phrase the question properly. And you'll find out, like, they seem to think Jesus hates immigrants and is against abortion because they haven't read it. And that's how the church has always done it, the gatekeepers. For 1,000 years, it was in Latin, right? Over 1,000 years, it's in Latin. So people couldn't hear the teachings of Christ, especially because people were illiterate for the first 1,000 years. So you had the priest. You had Jesus' teachings on authority filtered through authority, right? Jesus' teachings about resisting institutions filtered through an institution. So for thousands, I mean, we've only been reading the Bible critically for about 400 years out of 2,000. So I want to say this right. The gatekeepers have always had an interest in making us believe that Jesus is the divine Son of God, and he did miracles, and he built this church right here. But they, for many years, did not want people to know what Jesus said about wealth, or about war, or violence, or authority. And I was saying today at lunch, my mother always said that when she was in the convent, they never allowed the nuns to read the Bible. My dad couldn't believe this. My dad thought she was making it up, but she's like, no, they said, you go to Mass every day, Father reads it for you.
Wow.
We weren't allowed to read it.
Wow.
And in Vatican II, suddenly nuns can read the Bible, and the church came out for everyone to read the Bible. And what happened when they did it? The nuns became theologians. The nuns became experts, and the nuns became the fiercest critics of the Vatican's policies for being against Jesus.
Wow. Wow.
They've spent 2,000 years trying to make us worship Jesus as a God so we don't pay attention to his actual words. And I'm not here to disparage the miracles. They're great. They're the best parts of every Jesus movie as a kid. But if you're trying to convince people that your movement's right, 2,000-year-old secondhand accounts of supernatural events are not the way to do it. But the teachings of Jesus are still radical ethics. Blessed are the meek. I mean, it's like, you know, turn the other cheek. Don't hate your enemy. Jesus was breaking the cycle. He's like, forget winning. You're not here to win and own the other guy. You're here to be the one who ends it. You're here to be the one who forgives him. You're done with that. That's not what we do anymore. That's the new covenant. So that's what I believe in, because I've seen it for myself. I've seen it work. And again, I'm someone who grew up like many of you, in the height of the AIDS crisis. And what do we see then, right? An oppressed minority that Jesus never condemns. I go deep on how Jesus was, you can make the argument he's pro-gay, that's in the book, or at least pro-not hating gay people. And when the AIDS crisis hit, we saw the worst of humanity. We saw 20,000 Americans die before the president said the name of the disease. But what else did we see? We saw the gay Americans stop waiting for help, stop waiting for rescue, demand justice, demand service, demand results, and they're straight allies. And what did we have from this? The swiftest advancement of civil rights for any oppressed minority in history. Think about it. In one generation, we went from you can get fired for being gay because we think you might have AIDS to a president in a re-election campaign in 2012 endorsing marriage equality. And gay people are the oppressed minority in every minority. But we saw the swiftest advancement of civil rights for a minority group in the history of humanity. And America led the way, and it happened because of a plague. And the AIDS crisis was Easter. It was joy that turned to suffering and humiliation and death, and then rebirth. That's why I love that Easter's at spring. That's what it's all about. That's the story of Christ. He shows up on Sunday. They all love him. Palm Sunday. They're calling him king. They're calling him Messiah. That's probably what sealed his fate on Sunday. By Tuesday, he's giving us Matthew 25 and saying individuals and nations judged by this. He has the temple freakout episode, which is about exploiting the poor with surge pricing. So they're done with the guy. They arrest him by Thursday, and by Friday, everyone who cheered him on Sunday is there to boo him and watch him die horribly on Friday. And then he comes back, and he forgives everyone. No revenge, because the Jews didn't kill Jesus. Everyone kills Jesus. It's the point of the story. The cops and the religious officials and his friends sell him out. And he comes back and forgives everyone. No payback, which is what he said in his first public gig, the Sermon on the Mount, turn the other cheek. Modeled it for all of us. It's still too much to bear. Most of us couldn't imagine that kind of forgiveness and love.
Powerful.
But it's still shocking, and it can still save us.
Thank you. Powerful.
Thank you.
Powerful.
Thank you.
Someone asked, how do we respond to Christians, and they did the quotes, Christians, who love to quote Jesus saying, I bring not peace, but a sword.
Yeah, it's a
so
great
when
one.
they weaponize specific
Yeah.
scripture.
Jesus is not, here's the thing about Jesus, the guy was big on metaphor. And, you know, so much
Just
of the
a little
Bible,
bit, yeah.
like I say in the book, there's a lot of truth in the Bible, not necessarily a lot of facts, but a lot of truth. And Jesus spoke in parable and metaphor for many reasons to convey his teachings. For a largely illiterate audience, it was a better way to tell stories. People will remember it if it's the Good Shepherd, don't put your light under a bushel, the prodigal son, like the stories help people get the lessons more than just preaching at them. And in the case of I came not to bring peace but bring a sword, he's not talking about a literal blade for killing people. Everything Jesus says is against using violence on people. It's all metaphor. Ask your friends who are, I came to bring a sword. Well, where does Jesus come out in favor of using swords? Even Luke, you know, Luke 32, sell your cloak and buy a sword. Well, he said that to fulfill a prophecy that they had to be criminals. We have to have swords so they'll arrest us. They say, hey, Jesus, we have 2 swords already. Jesus is like, oh, that's enough. You don't have to buy any swords. They pull one line out of that. Sell your cloak and buy a sword. And it means Jesus is pro-gun now, right? Luke 22. So when he says, I came to bring a sword, he's talking about a metaphorical sword to say that if you follow me, if you walk this narrow path of caring about the marginalized, it's going to cost you something. You will lose loved ones. You will lose friends. You will lose family members if you take up this cross and carry it with me every day. But that's what he said you have to do. It's not supposed to be a convenient religion. And you know, if you start talking like Jesus, there's people from high school who'll call you a communist. That's the deal. You're either doing the crucifying or getting crucified. So there is no reading of the New Testament where Jesus comes out in favor of violence. The last thing he says to his friends is, those who live by the sword will die by the sword. It is a metaphor. The guy said, I am the bread of life. He did not mean I am made of flour and yeast. It's how he talked.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesus was not saying to shank people.
Not saying to shank
Okay.
people. Nope.
Not there. Okay,
Not
last.
early Christians too, not into stabbing people.
Okay, last question from our audience. How can good people of faith and good people of non-faith fight to preserve the First Amendment as a moral imperative? So talk to us about, we're Americans and there's a moral imperative.
What do
in
you
that.
think? What do you think about that? You're more qualified than me.
Oh. I don't know that the First Amendment should be our only focus, but
I
I
agree.
think that we should exercise it freely as we are.
I agree.
And so I think that, to your point, these conversations are critical to exercise it, not just have it, but to exercise it and do that boldly with our faith backing that up.
I agree.
But talk to me more.
You know, the atheists and the believers are going to have to be awkward roommates again
I love it.
to
Yeah.
take care of Christian nationalism.
Right.
The Christians and the Jews and the Muslims and the Hindus and the agnostics and the atheists and the people without labels are going to have to be awkward roommates. It wasn't just Christianity and the civil rights movement.
Right.
And throughout history, we've seen secular organizations partner with spiritual organizations to bring about incredible progress. I mean, so much of the civil rights movement, you had churches giving the cover, giving the spiritual authority and giving the congregations and a place to meet, but it was secular groups and organizing and political organizers who also worked with them. Look at the struggle against totalitarian communism in Poland. That was the Catholics and the trade unions. I mean, there's so many examples throughout history of civic organizations working hand in hand with believers. And they don't want us to do that. They want Christians and Jews and Muslims and atheists to hate each other because divide and conquer is how the authoritarians always do it. They are terrified of Christians, Muslims, Jews, and atheists coming together to beat them because that's how we beat them. So I love it. I just spoke recently at the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Boy, those atheists are doing the Lord's work. And, and I just spoke, I was last month in DC at the Americans United for Separation of Church and State, and that was like, that was a lot of, I mean, some of the best Christians I know are atheists. And when I see organizations that say, hey, we can do this together because atheist folks care about helping the homeless, right? And Christian folks care about fighting spiritual corruption.
Right.
It's such logical allies. We've formed friendships. Everyone here has non-believer friends and family, and you love them, and they love you, and we get along just fine. So it's going to come down to coalitions. That's the only thing that has ever beaten back the mean, crazy Christians.
I'm going to take that as a huge encouragement that in this room there are coalitions that can be formed right now. So thank you so much for your time.
I'm so honored to be here. I'm so honored that you would give of your time and brilliance to like class it up too. Thank you so much. And I just want to.
Thank you.
And if I may, I just want to thank all of you. I'm writing a follow-up book, and I haven't slept in 7 months. And to be able to come to this beautiful part of our country and be in a room with all of you tonight, for all of us to be together, and for me to bear witness to your witness is such an honor for me. It feels like a holy moment, and this is the America I believe in. Thank you for inspiring me.
Let's thank John once more. Thank you, John. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll take the hug.
Thank you. Well
You're
done.
so good. Is that okay?
Well done.
Is that a breath of coffee? Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. There is no raffle. There's no raffle. I'm sorry. Thank you all so much.
There is no raffle.
There's no raffle.
But I do have one more person to invite up here. I get the pleasure to hand off to Dr. Julie Dodge to do the closing and final remarks. But I want you to know who this phenomenal woman is first before she comes up here. Dr. Julie Dodge serves as the board chair for the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, and she is currently the director of substance use services at LifeWorks Northwest, and also leads a small house church called the Trinity Project. So she is in the trenches with us every day. As a former professor of social work and leadership in ministry, she's committed to fostering critical thinking, which we need more of, and conversations grounded in faith and justice, which we just had here today. She's served on the Theological Education and Dialogue Committee at Ecumenical Ministries since joining the board, and she is a leader in our community who has paved the way for beautiful conversations like this. So please welcome Dr. Julie.
Well, it is fantastic that you all have made it this far. And as the chair of the board of directors, I would love to invite you to join our awkward coalition of Christians, Muslims, and Jewish people at Ecumenical Ministries, where there's room for you to be part of the work that we're doing to bring justice according to our faith traditions and to partner together. There's room for you. So come join us. We really want to say thank you to a whole bunch of folks. First off, one more time, John Fugelsang. Jessica Taylor is a phenomenal woman. I got to have a lovely conversation with her over lunch today. She's fantastic. I want to thank her for her leadership as well. I would be remiss, he's not on my notes, they wrote notes for me, which is, thank you, Christy. But not to say thank you to Frank So, our executive director, who, y'all just Google Frank So. That's all I'm gonna say. You wanna know someone who knows, this is a man you would like to know. Just saying. We also want to give, again, our appreciation to the Collins Foundation, they've supported this this opportunity for 50 years. We've been bringing this with their support. So thank you to them. To the Trinity Episcopal Cathedral, okay, I saw Nadia Boltz-Weber here. That was phenomenal, but this is great. I love this facility, and I want to say thank you for hosting us here. We also want to recognize we've got 14 watch parties happening online tonight. There's 100 other folks out there watching, or they're going to come back and watch. We're super excited at your participation tonight. And there's one more way. Well, there's a couple ways you can participate. If you take a look at this little card that, of course, you're going to take home. You're not just going to recycle it. Or you can scan the QR code right now. There's going to be opportunities for you. And the one thing I want to say up front is we have the opportunity. There's a $100,000 matching grant that has come in for Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. We are $39,000 towards our goal, and if you scan this little QR code, you can help us meet our goal of maximizing that matching grant. Whether it's $5 or $500 or whatever your heart says you can do. We would love it if you would support the work at EMO. And if you're not familiar with this, again, scan that QR code, learn about EMO. The last thing I want to say, I mean, there's so many thoughts, and I hope that you all are thinking. I hope your brains are thinking. I hope your hearts are burning a little bit. I hope you're thinking about how can I engage with that person who thinks differently than I do. And I think there's a lot to be said for a lot of humility, a willingness to say, hey, you and I might not think the same, but you know what? I'm going to go bring some food to some people downtown who don't have any. Do you want to join me? Invite them with you. Invite them with you to serve the poor, which John references in his book. The Bible asks us to do over 300 times. So instead of maybe even just engaging in the argument, invite them to obey. Invite them to walk alongside you and do it together. We are so thankful for you. Be safe going home tonight. Don't run over any parade goers. That's bad. What? Oh, there'll be some books in the back, and there's book signing. John's happy to sign those, so if you'd like to buy a book, they'll be in the back, and you're welcome to do that. We also, by the way, if you want to have more conversations about this stuff, when you're going to get an email if you bought your tickets online, and they're going to give you a place where you can say, hey, I'd love to gather with some folks and talk more about this. So, with all of that, thank you for being here. Go in peace. We love you all.